Hi, the reason why I want to start this podcast, I actually have three reasons. Number one is to entertain the listener. Number two is for personal mental growth. And the third one is to record and capture great conversations with my daughter, Alyssa.
I also have three reasons why I want to start this podcast. The first one being to have a creative outlet. The second one, having quality time with my dad. And the third is to inspire the audience. My name is Alyssa.
My name is Angel.
And welcome to Words, No Wisdom. Talk to me about your reasons for starting this.
All right. By the way, this is Alyssa, my daughter. My name is Angel. This is the Words, No Wisdom podcast. And I have three reasons why I want to do the podcast. One of them is to entertain you, the listener. For the longest time, I have always wanted to perform. I always wanted to be on stage. I even did at some point a little bit of stand-up comedy. And I would love to just be able to be out there entertaining people in any possible way. And this is the very first podcast that we do. Give me one of your reasons, and then I'll go into the number two and number three.
All right. Well, my number one reason is to have a creative outlet for any sort of ideas, discussions that I want to be having. I feel like I always have a huge bundle of things that I need to be talking about, or I want to be talking about, or I have talked about. And I just really wanted a honed platform and situation to get it all out on. No jumbles, no...
Right.
Yeah.
No, I understand. My second reason, and then we can go out and deep dive or do a little more of an expansion on all of these different reasons why we are doing this podcast. The other one is personal mental growth. And I was very specific about this one. I believe that when unpacking when having a conversation, a long format discussion like the ones that we're planning on doing, I think not only do we want to bounce ideas about what is that we believe, but before we actually go into a podcast and have a conversation, if we have a topic already at hand, that's probably going to force me to have to look and do a little research about the topic before I go in, so that I don't go in there with no wisdom. Even though the whole reason for the name of the podcast is we're going to exchange a lot of words, most of them probably with no wisdom or no claimed wisdom. But if there's something that we can get out of this and be able to grow mentally, spiritually, physically, in any aspect, relationally, then I think we'll be in great shape.
Agreed. I think another reason that I wanted to start this was quality time with you.
Aww.
I think that's definitely one of my top love languages, which is so interesting to me. Fun fact, every single time I start getting interested in a boy, I make him take the love languages test and make him discuss it with me. So right. I am so interested in what there is to unpack there, but I really do enjoy spending time with you, and I feel like we could capture some beautiful moments.
Actually, coincidentally, that's the last one for me, which I actually wrote it down as record and capture great conversations and moments with Alyssa, my daughter. Now, I think the last part has different elements to it. One of them is to record, obviously on camera, our conversations. And the other one is to capture the moments. And what I mean by that is recording... I don't know if recording somebody's conversation is necessarily entertaining for everyone in every single aspect. And what I hope out of this podcast is not that everybody's going to always love the topic at hand. I hope that you are able to look past the actual title of the topic and understand that moments or great moments are going to happen just by the unpacking on these conversations. And I think you and I have had countless conversations where we go into something very trivial, as I'm cooking dinner, for example, and also we are talking about predestination, for example. So those moments, I would like to be able to capture them, and hopefully somebody out there that is listening or watching these videos and this podcast will be able to be entertained, maybe even grow themselves if that is something that that's going to be part of the experience for them. What do you think?
For sure. And that's actually my third reason, is to inspire some audience. I don't want to go into this being like, I have a huge audience already, all these things, but I hope that from the discussions with you, from the father-daughter dynamic, that some other people will see that and be like, wow, I think I could have a really good conversation with this person in my life about this, or I have a lot to share on this too. Maybe I'll sit down with a friend and have at it with this similar topic or that type of thing. So just to sort of inspire our moments in other relationships, I think is a big one for me.
Awesome. And listen, this is, there has been so many people that I have spoken to that kind of have told me we should do this. We should record ourselves in these lengthy conversations. And my biggest concern is that nobody is going to care or want to listen to it. But one of the things that we discussed was how long these episodes are going to go. And you can agree with me, I'm assuming that almost all of the podcasts or videos or long format shows that we listen to allow for that, allow for an expansion of more than 45 minutes conversations or topics in order to be able to get to that. That's why I, for example, love this long format videos that have invitations or people that get interviewed, and at the beginning you think that they have it all together, and as the podcast goes on you start getting deeper and deeper and deeper, and that is where you can capture some of those great moments, and I'm hoping that we can share those moments with you, to be honest. So
Agreed.
all right. Anything else from the original part of the list of the reasons why that you would like to expand, or maybe give us a few extra nuggets? What was the first one again?
Creative outlet.
Create an outlet. Okay. Why? Why do you want to create an outlet? Like, what's going on?
I feel like if I don't, it's almost more distracting with this transitional period in my life. I mean, I'm a senior, going off to college soon and all these things, and there's so much happening in my brain, as is everybody's experiencing that. But I just feel like I have so many really heavy and insightful topics that are developing as I'm turning into an adult, and I think that having a specific outlet and a specific platform to direct all of those things into is going to help me stay organized within my own mind and make sure that I am allotting my focus where it needs to go, when it needs to go there, so that I'm not like, oh, let's talk about, I don't know, this crazy deep topic at the end of my AP Lit class, which is what I've been doing. And I'm like, I just need somewhere for this to go, right, so that it's not
that makes sense.
Distracting.
That makes sense. I think, man, especially during this time of you trying to make a lot of different decisions, it's going to be pretty nerve-wracking, and I think this is a good way to put it out there. And of course we're putting it out into the world to see if anyone wants to be part of it, wants to listen, even wants to comment on it. I bet that a lot of people are going to be able to relate to you. They'll be able to even want to jump in and try to give you advice, or just listen. And I think that's what we are hoping for here. I know there's a lot of people out there doing podcasts and shows and trying to come up with a reason for why they're doing what they're doing. And I think it's even risky because we've been talking about how exactly we're going to be creating this podcast, and to be honest with you, this might even be too broad for us to start. This might be too much, and maybe we can hone in into something so special and or very special as to capture the moments. Alyssa and I claim sometimes to know what we're talking about, and sometimes we feel like what we have to say is so important, but you never know. So in the meantime, I think it's kind of nice that we can have this as a as a springboard to get us started somewhere to determine where this is going to go and how this is going to entertain people, hopefully get into some conversations that others might want to bring to the table with their own families, and for my own personal growth as well, because I know that I'm probably going to learn a lot of things, just like I have learned some things from you already, even though you're still young. Yeah.
For sure.
What was your number 2?
My number 2 is quality time.
Okay.
With you.
Yes.
Going off of that, your number 2 is also capturing good moments with me, so they're kind of similar.
Right.
How would you describe the dynamic of our generational difference and all those types of things that can play into why this would be unique content?
Yeah. And I know that we talked about that. We talked about, the potential of even naming this podcast something that relates to the generational differences. So just to give you a little background on us, if that's okay, I grew up in Puerto Rico, and I moved here right after high school, and then I came here just to go to college, and I planned to go back to Puerto Rico, and I didn't. So not only am I older than you, but I'm also coming from another country that has just a certain different flavor on how things are supposed to be done and how things ought to be. And even though I think we do have a lot of differences because of generation, I think that you and I are very similar in spirit and in maturity level. Because, yeah. So, yeah, I think our conversations, and as you can see in the future, when you start looking at the titles and the topics that we're going to be covering, you're going to be surprised of how complicated they could be, or hopefully they're super simple. But when it comes to the generational differences, I think that the more we talk and the more we dig deeper into to these topics, some things might actually start making sense of why is it that I say the things that I will say or tend to say, and how your point of view is definitely molded by social media, by your schooling, by your friends. The same thing as me. I bet you anything that if I was to have my dad or my mom sitting down with me and have conversations, it's going to be something extremely different. And I'm actually hoping that I can learn something from the young generation that is coming up, because I have so far been pretty impressed with some things. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that even though we do have the generation difference,
right,
and differences in upbringings, I mean, going to an all-girls school is definitely crucial to who I am and that type of thing. So I think that we have different perspectives and different approaches for sure, even though we do have a lot of similarities in faith and that type of thing. But I think through those different perspectives, we're going to realize that even most of our opinions are mostly the same. We just have very different ways of getting there. And I think that is something I'm excited to learn from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like the metaphor about, you can skin a cat.
What?
What is it?
No.
There's more than one way to skin a cat.
I've never heard of that one.
Yes, you have. Or a car, the fork of the fork on the road, and the car probably is going to end up in the same place, but it doesn't matter whether he goes left or right. Maybe there's just going to be a different view. Maybe there's going to be a much better scenery. But yeah, definitely we're going to have some differences. We're going to have some differences in opinion, and many a times we're going to be very, very close to hopefully to the truth, if we can, try to get as close as possible to the truth in having these conversations. I also hope that when we have these talks that we are able to remove ourselves from the room, from the camera, from the lighting, from the microphones, and be able to actually get in without having that um, what do you call that, pressure of the camera, pressure of what is it, that how we sound, how our voice is going to sound, how we're going to look, and be able to actually get in and have some great insight into each other's minds, be able to share this with people, and I don't know, entertain, grow, and put all of this out into the internet for hopefully eternity. Anything else you would like to add about our goal for this show?
I think it's important to act like we don't even have an audience, and that's kind of a goal in itself, is to, like, you know, I might be thinking as I'm sitting here, oh, I wonder if this person will hear it. Oh, I wonder if it'll reach 20 people. I wonder if it'll reach 5 people. But regardless of that, like, it's just the conversation that needs to happen, and it's not assuming anything's going to come out of it. And I think that's where we're going to thrive the most.
No, absolutely. I think that's probably going to be the toughest part, but maybe after a few episodes, we are able to get into the hang of things. The reason for the title, you want to talk about that?
All right. Words, no wisdom.
We had how many? How many would you say that we had on the list of titles?
We probably had like up to maybe 20, 30 at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Back and forth. I don't know. I like telling people about it. It's fun to get a reaction from that one.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, ooh, okay, what does that mean?
Right.
How are you gonna, like, what is that dynamic? But it truly is so accurate. I mean, we're not qualified to be doing
Absolutely
this.
not. Absolutely. We don't have any kind of degrees that grant us being able to speak eloquently about anything. And that's why, I guess, again, capturing those moments and be able to let the world see us in action and hear what we have to say. Words no wisdom came out from the expression words of wisdom, and we just interjected the word no in it in order to make it, well, I didn't want to sound, well, there's so many cheesy names and titles to different podcasts out there in the world, and we wanted to capture the essence of what is it that we have to bring. We tend to love to hear each other talk, and a lot of words come out of our mouths, and sometimes they're not founded on anything special other than our feelings. I'm not saying all the time. Sometimes what we say is very true and very specific and grounded on research or things that we have read or seen or studied. But many a times it's just exactly how we feel, trying to unpack the complicated things about the world.
When I was thinking about this title for the podcast, realistically, how truthful do you think it is, and how kind of joking do you think that it is? Because I was thinking about it, and one of my friends was like, no, there's totally wisdom. Like, that's so funny because you're saying the opposite of what's going to happen. And at first I was like, it wasn't really a joke. I mean, like, we don't claim to have wisdom. But we also, like, but she was so set on, like, oh, that is so funny that you would say, like, the complete opposite of what you're going to produce out there.
Okay.
And so how much do you think is a little bit of joking, and how much do you think is us just being confidently humble?
I mean, yeah, first we would have to define the word wisdom. And I'm not going to look it up right now. But I guess since our show or the idea of the podcast is not to be educational, I don't think the category will be educational, at least not yet. If we were to put that as a category for what this podcast is going to be like, then it would have to be entertaining or entertainment. And if we're going to be providing something that's going to be used just for the purpose of entertainment, or to at least give people something to think about, we don't want to be utilized as the source of truth. However, yeah, I mean, I have some life experiences and you have some life experiences. So we can use that. We can use the best that we can to be able to discuss or to say things that are as true as possible to the actual nature of the topic itself, regardless of, how much research we've done in the particular topic. So I will say that, yes, jokingly speaking, we don't want to be taken that serious. And hopefully people can just take it for what it is, which is two people, a father and a daughter, having these conversations. And hopefully there are going to be some great moments in those conversations. But yeah, I assume that there's going to be at some point or another some wisdom superimposed on our listeners.
Agreed. I feel like it might be in my head like 60% a joke, 40% real.
You were looking for percentages.
Maybe
okay.
That's my ego talking.
Right.
But words no wisdom, like, yeah, like that's so silly. Like that is a joke of a title, and it's a little bit playful like that.
I like it. I like it a lot.
I do too.
Yes, that's pretty good. We both think many a times, and we have had some interesting conversations where, we believe in what we believe, and we want to stick to it, and we want to demonstrate to the other person that we know what we got. And that's one topic that I would love to discuss in the future. Why is it that we are so enamored with the idea that we have to be right on the things that we say, almost as if it is life or death, almost as if somebody was to find out that I do not know my stuff, then I will be worthless. And humans, I don't think, want to ever be worthless.
Right. I actually just had a huge revelation about myself recently in regards to this topic. I think that I have always considered myself a person who's very good at vulnerability and being able to be open about my emotions and all of these things. But it wasn't until recently that I figured out that my vulnerability is only comfortable to me when it's in hindsight, when I'm talking about my past. But then in the present, I have a really hard time being vulnerable because I'm scared of being wrong about my interpretation of whatever is at hand.
Yeah.
And I'm so scared of being wrong that I won't verbalize what's going on in that moment because I just have to be right so badly. So I won't even speak on it till it's over and it's in the past and I can own up to whatever happened and be right about it.
Right. Yeah, that's complicated. I also think that when wanting to be right, it might be instinct. It might be something almost like the instincts that we got as hunters and gatherers back in the day, where it is imperative that, because, this is what I'm thinking right now. If we had to hunt, if I have to go hunting something as somebody, or if I had to be the leader of the pack for that particular tribe or group of people, that segment of civilization, somehow I have to almost portray myself as a superior being in order to be able to be in that leadership position. So sometimes I think that we have that innate in us, because it is extremely devastating to be put in a position where you have to defend your thoughts, and you have to almost convince others that you are right. And even sometimes when you know you're wrong and you're already too deep into it, there is a need. And I think that need probably comes more as an instinct, because just trying to verbalize why we even feel that way, or why is it that we have to act the way that we do, something tells me that is almost just instinct, and it's not even something that is learned.
For sure. And I also think not only is that hard, trying to prove yourself to be better or prove yourself to be right, but I also think the harder part is learning that is what you're doing and trying to adapt and overcome that instinctual superiority and trying in trying to like recognize like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. That's probably not so helpful sometimes. You know what I mean? And I think having that self-awareness to recognize that is harder than the actual trying to prove yourself in the first place.
Right. Right. I mean, assuming that is what's going on, assuming that it is all natural instinct. So I guess the question will be then, do we have to suppress those instincts? What if we just roll with it and go with the flow? Like, who is that going to hurt other than, well, I guess potentially relationships? But why? And I think that gets into the topic of pride. And then the topic of pride is, I know that we have that as one of the topics that we have to discuss, because it gets very complicated, this whole issue with pride. But the notion of wanting to not be found out, I think that's the key. And I remember hearing from somebody one time that said that a man's biggest fear in a relationship, especially with their wives or with a partner, is to be found out, for that other person to discover how big of a mess up you are. And that is frightening. That is extremely scary, because nobody wants to. And well, in my case, the way that I grew up as a man, I don't want people to know my faults, because again, that's gonna make it sound like I'm not capable of doing X, Y, and Z. And if I'm not capable of doing X, Y, and Z, then why would my partner want to be with me? There's just no reason for that to happen. So I think that's one of the primal reasons why sometimes we get like that, a little hurt, a little defensive. Oh man, the defensive mechanisms we have. There's a game right now that I'm playing called I hardly ever play video games, but there's a game called Hollow Knight, and one of the charms that you can use to protect yourself, actually that's pretty much ideal. Or as an explanation, whenever something hits your character, out of the character, almost like wings, comes out this claws. They're like thorny bushes or thorny branches that come out and scratch the enemy that is actually attacking you. And I think that's exactly what happens when somebody's coming after you for you not being right. That defense mechanism is almost inherent, and you cannot fight it.
So I just listened to a talk recently in class, and he was talking about marriage and I don't know, just some of the complications that fall into that. And a claim that he made was that you want your partner to read your soul. Do you agree or disagree? Because after I'm hearing this, I'm questioning that claim more than I did before. Because initially he was talking about like, oh, you know, when you're upset and you're like, oh, I'm fine, like, I'm fine, I'm okay, blah, blah, blah. And you expect your partner to read your soul and understand that you're not okay, something's going wrong and that type of thing, but you don't want to verbalize that.
Right.
But what you're saying is contradictory to that. So now I'm wondering of the validity of that claim.
No, I never thought about that. I know that we do joke about that and our wives, like when I'm with friends, you know, claiming that could be, or that's one of the things that sometimes annoy us, which is the thought that our spouses are hoping that we can read their minds and always be one step ahead to solve their problems or to be in the same mindset that they are. But I guess that could probably be said about anybody, not necessarily, you know, the difference between wives and husbands.
I was just about to ask, so maybe it's a more woman instinct to
that happens to me too. Sometimes I want my mind to be read.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't.
But
think
not to the point where you get, what's the word you used?
Annoyed?
No, like uncovered, like found out.
Oh, found out. Right.
So you want to be read but not found out?
Yeah.
Right.
I would like to be read but not found out. Right. It's like the whole notion of skeletons in your closet. Nobody wants to see those. Well, a lot of people probably want to see those. You don't want anybody to see those skeletons in your closet, I will say. Yeah, man, that we went deep quick. Deep. So those are the kind of topics that I'm assuming that we are going to be able to get into.
Yeah.
And hopefully we are able to, like we said earlier, get really close to the truth. Tell you, or me telling you telling me, us telling the audience what is it that is really in our heart. And something tells me that we are probably going to end up having opinions one day and maybe have an opposite or a contradictory opinion on another episode. And that's something that I am a little not afraid, but I want to be cautious, because is to be that transparent in front of an audience or in front of a show, or in a recording where people are going to hear your thoughts, and then the week later you say something that completely contradicts what you have said the previous week. That can be quite frightening, but at the same time I think that is healthy, because if we are able to unpack, discuss, dig, even do some research on particular topics before we go and have these conversations, I think that's going to help us with mental growth, which is my number 2 reason for this podcast. So I don't fear it. I embrace it. I invite it. I'm hoping that some of those situations happen where we are put in a situation to maybe even change our own minds and our own thinking, our own rationalizing of things, whether is generational, whether is our differences as humans, how we grew up, how we were raised, our religion, our upbringing, our schooling. There's so many aspects and elements that are making us who we are, and that almost work as a machine that creates words that come into your brain because of your experiences and no other. So I'm not even sure that it's wisdom. I think it's just life experiences being, regurgitated at a million miles an hour.
Agreed. I'm also excited to change my mind. I want to. I think changing my mind is one of the most freeing things that happens in my life, and it happens pretty frequently. And I love talking about that change and talking about, okay, this is what I thought, this is what I think, this is how I got here. I was wrong the first time, I think. Maybe not.
Awesome.
But that is something I'm really looking forward to as well.
Let's hope that we can change minds. Let's hope that we can change our minds. And let's hope that we can help somebody out there who's listening. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.